Right, let's ho ho ho. Welcome to this festive episode of the Biophiles with myself, Ed. We have Jack and Diz here as well, where we're going to be taking you through three interesting and maybe tenuously Christmas or festive related science stories which we've enjoyed researching in the recent past, which we hope to discuss today. So we hope you had a Merry Christmas, and in between this time between Christmas and New Year's, and maybe a bit beyond into the early New Year, you can enjoy listening to a bit of science and a bit of chat to I don't know why you want to listen to this, but we enjoy doing it, so if you fancy, then do listen. So without further ado, Jack, if you want to kick off with your first story, if you want to kick off first.
Yeah, sure thing. Mine is quite Christmassy. It's all about reindeer. It's a paper I found. I think a few people have done research in this area, but I think it's more or less just like one or two big papers looking at reindeer antlers as a potential cure for arthritis, and also a bit science fiction-y, but like regrowing limbs and stuff like that, a bit like a lizard or something. Because as you might know, reindeer, they grow their antlers every year and then shed them again, grow them again, shed them again.
Do they completely shed off? Do they completely get removed like a snake where the skin goes and there's still like a...
They shake them off and it drops.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly how they do it, but I think they like cut off the blood supply when it gets to like springtime, and then they pretty much just like shake them off, and it's all a bit gory, I think, as well, because they end up bleeding everywhere.
Oh.
Don't they peel? Like something on them peels, doesn't it? And it look really bloody, and like because it looks like the antlers have peeled skin off them, and then they like shake them loose. It's like felt almost, like on them. I think before they mature fully.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think when they start growing them, they're covered in that like fuzz and skin and stuff, and then when they're like fully grown, then they like scrape the skin off, and they just have the exposed like bone antler bits.
Oh,
but yeah, it looks pretty gory when they're doing that bit. It looks blood and skin everywhere. It's gross.
And how do we know how they're able to grow these things again? Because that's kind of like another limb being grown year in, year out.
Yeah, it's a really rare thing. Apparently, they're the only mammals that are able to regenerate bone-like structures in this way. I think it's technically cartilage, and then it like hardens into bone. I'm not sure if it's like full, like proper bone, or like just extra hard cartilage.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were saying it's this thing called thymosin beta 10, which humans have as well. But apparently, like, genetically, there's a 7% difference in the genetic code, and that is enough to be able to allow them to, magically regenerate their bone like this, which humans and other mammals aren't capable of.
Wow.
What does it do for us?
Yeah, where are humans ones? Where's our thymosin 10?
So, basically, they have completely the opposite function in humans as they do to deer, which is, it just goes to show how like a little difference, a little 7% difference can completely change the effects of a protein like that. So in the deer, it stimulates cartilage growth and angiogenesis, which is blood vessel growth, which is something you see in tissue when it's developing, like muscle tissue, and in tumours as well. That's how like tumours can trick the body into feeding them with blood. And then in humans, it does the opposite. It's actually discourages growth and discourages angiogenesis, blood vessel growth.
Where? Like kind of during development when we don't need to be like... Is that so angiogenesis might be going on and then you produce thymosin 10, it's like, all right, we're going to stop angiogenesis now?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's sort of, in controlling your growth and stopping you from ending up like 7 feet tall with like extra legs or something.
You could have done with a bit more thymosin 10, Jack.
Yeah, I could
have. Bit less. I'm
going to have to go down to the shop and start injecting myself.
Yeah. Growing antlers. Just grow antlers.
It's nearly mating season, according to this, anyway.
When is your mating season, Jack?
Still wait for it. It's a very short window. But yeah, it's quite cool. So they were saying it could be used to cure like arthritis and stuff like that, by encouraging your cartilage to grow back. So I think with arthritis, the problem is your cartilage wears away and then your bones start just grinding together.
Yeah.
So it could help with that. And like
That's
healing
really
as
cool.
well.
So is it like, would you inject this into the site, or would you think you probably wouldn't eat it, would you? Because then that would be or ingest it. Sorry, it would be non-specific in terms of where it ends up, and you probably break it down.
Yeah, I think it would be like injecting it into your knee, or they were saying as well for like chronic injuries. So they were saying one example they gave was like, in diabetes when people's feet get all messed up, and obviously that can cause like long-lasting damage. This could be a way of, even if the foot has been messed up for a long time, it's a way of getting some blood back in and getting it to heal itself a bit more.
Yeah,
but yeah,
wow.
It would be localized because you don't want, obviously it's like another species signaling protein. You don't want that like all around your body circulating too much.
Yeah. Where are they at in terms of research? Have we had any trials? Have they like injected into mice and seen mice start growing antlers, or?
I don't think so. I think it was only a couple of years ago, so maybe they haven't had time to do like a follow-up study yet in other species. I think they were testing it in vitro, but not in other species in vivo yet.
Okay.
So yeah, just testing it like in a petri dish, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we distinguish in vitro is when you test on cells outside of an organism, or something outside of an organism, as Jack says, in petri dish, and in vivo is when it's inside an organism, be that a mouse or human. Ooh.
Do they have bone marrow inside the antlers?
If it's not bone, probably not.
Oh, you said it was cartilage, didn't you?
Yeah, like it has. So the antlers have blood supply, so they have blood vessels inside them. But yeah, because they're not proper, like skeletal bone, I'm not sure if they have marrow or not.
So it's not the same as like a narwhal's horn or like teeth, which are keratin.
Ivory.
No, the narwhal's horn is like keratin, isn't it? It's like your hair, but
it's cementum.
Fermentum.
It's cementum.
Cement.
Yeah, so it's an unusual structure, quite unlike our own teeth. They do not contain enamel, the hard outer coating of human teeth, but present a bone-like material called cementum. I thought they were ivory.
So you're saying there are no other mammals which do this sort of thing? Like,
yeah.
Are there kind of non-mammals which produce the same, I don't know, not keratin, the same cartilage productions? Because is cartilage mammal specific as well?
I don't think so, because sharks have cartilage, don't they?
Yeah, no, but yeah. Birds and things would probably have.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It'd probably be a completely different set of proteins and pathways and stuff. But obviously, you have certain reptiles like lizards and newts and stuff like that. Newts are amphibians, but yeah, they can regrow like whole limbs. But I think that must be a completely different pathway, because they were saying, apart from the antlers, obviously if you chop a reindeer's leg off, it's not going to grow back. It's only the antlers that can do it.
Yeah, they can't build themselves a stump leg from their antler.
No. just grow an antler from its like wrist.
Just walking on an antler from now on. It would be more. Well, do you think it would be more advantageous if they hurt their foot and they could just grow their foot back instead of having to limp around and die? They could just grow their foot back, or an alternative, and continue on as usual. But like that'd be kind of better for.
Yeah, it would.
survival.
They were saying there's something special about. They have like these spurs that always stay on the top of their head.
Yeah.
And that's where the antler growing happens. And I think there's something special about that site that's like extra reactive to this thymosin beta.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Like,
it wouldn't work for other parts of the body. It's just that bit that can do the special.
What's the head of the bone called? Like on your femur that grows. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, when we develop, like the head of our femur grows. That's what elongates us. It's like the same. It's not the same site, but it's like a hair follicle. I think grows from the same site. Specifically,
Google says
it's a certain
growth
region
plate.
grows. That's it. The growth plate.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Good name.
Well, and that what does that do? That's where we grow from.
That's where our bones grow. They grow out of the growth plates. It's only that region of the bone that grows, and it elongates from there. So it's not like the whole thing goes out. It just goes out from one side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it always stays at the top of the growth.
Yeah.
The forefront.
And they were saying the same about the antlers. Yeah, it starts off, when they start growing them, it starts from those spurs, and then it's only ever like the tip of the antler that's growing. And I think that's why it like branches off into lots of different ones, because it's always growing from the top, and maybe the top sometimes decides to just like branch off.
Yeah, do you know what causes the branching?
Massive capillary network.
And do you know what causes it to stop, or do they keep on going until the mating season's over?
In terms of branching, they didn't mention anything about that. In terms of stopping growing, it's all to do with like hormone changes throughout the like seasons.
Yeah.
That determines when it stops growing.
Wow. Well, do you have any stop codons for us, Jack, as we reach the end of your segment?
Yes, I do. So stop codon. It turns out there's a legitimate reason why some people hate Brussels sprouts. And I want you to guess out of 3 options what the potential reasons are. So is it A, genetics, B, age, or C, the microbiome? Which would you say?
Now, this was also going to be my stop codon, so I shan't answer.
No way.
Yeah.
Go on,
I'm going to say
what
C.
do you think?
C.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Although I think it is...
What?
It's a bit of a false trick question, because it is kind of all 3 to a certain extent. But yeah, they have found that differences in your oral microbiome, so the bacteria and stuff living in your mouth, can cause your saliva to break down the chemicals in the Brussels sprouts into sulfur volatiles, they said, which give off a particularly unpleasant, bitter and sulfurous taste. And yeah, it is more common in children as well to have these differences in the microbiome. So that's also why potentially some children hate them, especially when they're a kid and then grow up and end up liking them, because it kind of changes as you grow.
That's really interesting.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, they say that when you grow up, your taste changes. Like every 5 years, you should try something new again, or something that you used to hate, because that's when you're. This is old wives' tale that I've heard. Every 5 years, your taste changes. And I always thought it was to do with like taste receptors just changing because you're getting bigger and like things get proportionally bigger. So I just figured like maybe the receptors change and you start to like different things, or you perceive the signal differently. But that's actually mental.
That's different from what I picked up as well. I only found that there was a gene which they think might be associated with disliking sprouts, which is actually named the TAS2R38 gene. And that causes, I don't really know, I can't remember what the result was, but yeah, your perception of the taste was then different, because like, you can genetically not like, what is it, coriander, like that can taste of soap if you have one like specific gene or mutation. So I thought it was similar to that, but the microbiome is coming into everything at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what the research of the microbiome is like in 20 years' time, because everything is like it's the buzzword at the moment, and I think there's a lot of research for it, but you do wonder if we jump to the onto the bandwagon of it, and does correlation equal causation, sort of thing.
Well, I think they did find like a specific genus. I think it was Fusobacterium nucleatum was the one species that they said is like particularly prolific in sort of turning the Brussels sprout chemicals into the gross tasting chemicals.
Yeah.
So they did actually name a couple of culprits. They didn't just go like, it's probably the microbiome.
Well,
that's really cool.
That is cool. And I shall move us on to our next our next segment, which will be my topic this week. I was thinking that Father Christmas must eat an awful lot of like kind of mince pies, milk, sweet treats, whatever other people leave out for him. Maybe the odd carrot if he's feeling like not giving it to his reindeer. And thought, although he is it's perceived as being having a large circumference. You think that the amount he would eat of all the millions of children's houses which he goes around, he'd be a bit larger than he is. So I was kind of researching ways in which he might be able to keep that weight off, and wondered if he might have known about the GLP-1 or glucagon-like peptide 1 hormone analog called semaglutide, or as other people might know it as Wegovy or Ozempic. Before it was recommended as an anti-obesity drug, even before it might have been used as an anti-diabetes drug. So I've been looking into these GLP-1 analogs, which go under the trade name of Wegovy or Ozempic, depending if they're used for diabetes and or obesity, and kind of looking into how they work and what they're about. And have you guys have seen this in the news this year? Because it's been quite a lot. There's quite the big news story of where, especially NICE, the National Institute of something in the UK, recommended it as a anti-obesity drug which can be kind of used or prescribed by doctors. And kind of went on from there. So it's a glucagon-like peptide. That's what the GLP stands for, and it's the glucagon-like peptide 1. Is what the GLP-1 stands for. But this is an analog of it, which means they've produced this glucagon-like peptide in kind of their own format. So it's meant to represent what this peptide does, and it's very similar in structure. And you take this by injection, so because it's a peptide is a small protein, or like a fraction of a protein. And if you were to ingest this, then it would just get broken up by your gut. But they've been able to, or you get it injected, and then it can act kind of on your body. And the way it works is these glucagon-like peptide 1 is secreted by your intestines after you eat food, and it acts on your alpha or beta cells, which we'll get to in a moment, and also your brain. And in your brain, it kind of signals that you are like satiety, so you're satiated after having a meal, and you're full, and also fullness, and therefore it kind of prevents you from wanting to eat more. And that's the obese or the anti-obesity kind of area that it goes for. And then as a diabetes treatment, it inhibits the alpha cells, which are found in the islets of Langerhans. So in the islets of Langerhans are one of the greatest kind of cell populations, or greatest biological names, I think, in the human body. And they were found by a lad called Paul Langerhans, who not only discovered these during his PhD, but also discovered something called Langerhans cells as well, which are skin cells which are involved in the immune response. He's also discovered in the same paper something called layers of Langerhans, which are just kind of layers of these Langerhans cells. And also he's named something called Langeurin, which I didn't actually research what that was, but this prolific biologist have discovered all of these different parts of the human body. But anyway, in these islets of Langerhans, which are found in your pancreas, you have beta and alpha cells. So the beta cells produce insulin, and the alpha cells produce glucagon. And insulin is a hormone which is kind of produced when you eat, because you're digesting your food, the sugar is going into your bloodstream, and then insulin is produced and binds to receptors on your cells, which then enables glucose to be kind of uptaken by your cells, and then they can use it for their own respiration, which produces ATP, which is energy, and therefore you convert sugar to energy. However, with kind of type 1 diabetes, your body is kind of attacking these beta cells, and therefore they're not producing the insulin, and therefore you can't kind of regulate, 1, the insulin in your body, and 2, the blood sugar levels in your blood. Well, of course, blood sugar levels in your blood. Then you also got these alpha cells which are producing glucagon, and glucagon is kind of like the opposite of insulin, where it kind of produces glucose from your fat deposits. So if you ever have excess glucose, they'll start being made into fat and being stored as glycogen.
Yeah, glycogen.
As glycogen, yeah. But yeah, glucagon causes a breakdown of glycogen back into glucose, and can also produce gluconeogenesis, which is another cracking word, which just means breaking down other stores such as fat into glucose. So GLP-1, or semaglutide, or Wegovy and Ozempic, which are analogues of GLP-1, they're similar to glucagon. So they act on they inhibit alpha cells from producing glucagon, and they actually stimulate beta cells to produce insulin, which increases your insulin levels. And whereas type 2 diabetics are unable to intake glucose from their bloodstream into cells, their insulin receptors have become immune to uptaking insulin, and therefore if you produce more insulin, then you're able to get kind of a bit of a response because you're able to overcome this resistance slightly. And therefore GLP-1, which improves your insulin production or increases your insulin production, then enables more glucose from your bloodstream to enter into your cells and be used for cellular respiration. So a bit of a roundabout way of saying that, but yeah.
So it just spikes insulin production, so you can get enough insulin to actually see an effect that in other normal people a lower amount of insulin would be required to
yeah, bang on the money. So this was named by Science, which is an academic journal. This drug, or Wegovy, or semaglutide, which is the scientific name, was named by Science, the academic journal, as their breakthrough of the year, or like kind of top science story of the year. And they were giving a bit of an interesting background into how it kind of came from being discovered as a hormone, like GLP-1 as a hormone, to then actually being produced as a drug. And interestingly, the first drug, it wasn't kind of designed off of humans' GLP-1. They found a peptide which is very similar in a lizard's venom, in the glia lizard's venom, which was similar to GLP-1 and was easier for them to then produce a GLP-1 analog from, which does seem bizarre. One of the earliest studies they did to work out if it was affecting appetite is they got, I think it was 20 males, they got them to have a hearty breakfast I think the paper kind of referred to it as a hearty breakfast. They then injected them with either GLP-1 or with a placebo, so that probably was just like saline solution, so just some salty water, and then saw how much they ate at a lunch in a buffet lunch. And then, just kind of analysed how much food they took and were like, yeah, you know what, GLP-1 looks like it's working. They're eating more. They're eating
That's
less.
Such bad science.
Well, I think I'm not explaining it very well, because I think the science actually was fairly
It was good.
So I think, because I think the measurements they were taking were actually quite specific enough, so to say, so they were able to kind of draw enough of a conclusion. And there have been other GLP-1 agonists. This isn't the first one that there's Wegovy and Ozempic, but these ones can last a lot longer in your body because they've done a few subtle changes to the actual genetic code, which means that there's 2 amino acids which are different and an acetylation site which is different, and this enables it to last a lot longer in your blood. And so there are some other interesting things to cover, but as time is of the essence, I think we'll have to leave it for future studies. One final thing I should say as well is there's talks whether its safety is, or questions about the safety concerns. And for the studies which they've done, the main safety concern is gastrointestinal difficulties or complications, which has led to some people being kind of pulled out of these trials more so than the placebo arms. But these drugs haven't just come around onto the scene. They have been around for quite a while, especially as diabetes drugs since the early 2000s. And there hasn't, when I was doing a bit of a search of the literature, there isn't much, or there isn't major health concerns associated with this sort of application, which isn't to say there's not going to be, and it's still early days, so we still need to do the specific tests to kind of work out if it is completely safe, or it's going to come with even further complications. But initially, the safety concerns are looking fairly good. Okay.
What kind of gastrointestinal problems did they say it causes, or did it not say?
So it didn't say. There was always quite vague. And one of the ways these GLP-1 analogues work is they prevent gastric clearing, or subdue gastric clearing. So it's probably going to get really, really uncomfortable if you're having your intestines kind of full and your gastric system isn't emptying. Okay, so a Christmas stop codon. We have Christmas disease. is a disease which is named after the first reported patient called Stephen Christmas, not after its first time of diagnosis, Christmas itself.
Is he related to Santa?
I think he must be, because Stephen is, like, if you shorten Stephen, it does turn into Saint, and Saint Christmas, or ST, which is Saint, so maybe. But unfortunately, this lad did have a deficiency in factor 9. So, can you tell me what disease is resulting from a deficiency in factor 9?
Christmas disease.
Christmas disease?
Quite right. But what's okay, what does that... How have I worded this? So what disorder does this deficiency result in? So not disease, what disorder does this deficiency result in? A deficiency of factor 9.
Yeah, I'm going to go down the sprouts line, and it reduces your digestion ability of certain vegetables.
That would be very very opportune if this guy was called Christmas and had a distaste for sprouts. That's Did's answer. Jack, what are we going for?
I'm going to say... is it alcohol dehydrogenase, the one in your liver that breaks down alcohol?
It's not. The only Christmas link is the fact that this guy's just called Christmas.
Oh.
And factor 9 is involved in the blood clotting cycle. And so if you have a deficiency in it, it results in haemophilia. And more specifically, haemophilia B, which isn't very festive, but as Jack stole my... or didn't steal. The guy, it's called Christmas disease, all right? We're stretching here. As
festive joke.
Just we're past the Christmas time now. We're in the lull between Christmas and New Year, so we'll bring it back down to the morbid. Actually, it's not morbid. It's just a bit grey and can be seen as bleak. But anyway, right, I've rattled on a bit too long there. So we shall go on to our third and final section of the show, which will be Dids.
And it'll be nice and quick, gents. I won't keep you very long. True Dids fashion. I did research this quite thoroughly. It's been a week or so since. Ergo, I've read over my notes, a lot of which I can't read. Most of what I can read, though, is quite interesting. So this is related, funnily enough. I don't actually think we spoke about it, so it's kind of weird that we both come to a similar thing. It's to do with hormones, though, over a protein or a peptide you were talking about, and I'm talking about GDF15. And correct me if I'm wrong, that would stand for growth differentiation factor 15, which is a member of the transforming growth factor beta, the TGF beta superfamily, and it's excreted by a broad range of cells exposed to as a result of exposure to a broad range of stresses.
Okay, so you're stressed in some way, and you produce GFB15.
GDF15, just GDF15. From the TGF
family.
Superfamily. That's just some background information.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're excreting GDF15. Does anybody know, or has anybody heard about what GDF15 does?
Does it make you pregnant?
It doesn't make you pregnant, but it is upregulated in early pregnancy.
So, there we go.
Did you know that, or was that just a wild guess?
Just a complete wild guess, you know.
Well, you know a lot about pregnancy, sir. So GDF15 is actually what's it called? An appetite suppressant, or it turns into one of the effects is as an appetite suppressant, and it's upregulated in early pregnancy. What it does is it makes you feel sick or nauseous, and they've linked it to morning sickness. So they think that because only certain women or a certain percentage of the population are affected by elevated levels of GDF15. So some people get morning sickness really badly, some people don't. They think it's to do with your genetics and how susceptible you are to GDF15 levels, and that would bring about nausea. And they're thinking that it's because this is seen throughout loads of mammals, rats, mice, non-human primates. They see elevated GDF15 in early pregnancy, and they think it's to do with avoidance behaviours of noxious substances or plants or whatever they could eat that could potentially expose their fetus to teratogens. So things that would, I'm going to get the definition right, alter the fetus development and bring out like deformities. Would you guys agree that's a definition of teratogen rather than a fetal toxicant?
Like thalidomide was the big famous one back in the 60s or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad I haven't butchered that. So the way it apparently works, this is quite a mouthful. The GDF15 hormone binds to a specific receptor located in the hindbrain called GDNF-RET receptor. It's not just morning sickness, so it's like it brings out aversive behaviors and avoidance behaviors just because there's not a massive need for food. I found it really interesting because there's not a massive necessity for food in early pregnancy where there's not that much growth going on. It's just the fetal, like the embryo at this point, or the blastocyst at this point, like developing, doubling. It's not really that big, so there's not that much of a calorie need. So the idea is that it suppresses how much you eat to avoid the chance that you're going to be exposed to a potential toxicant or a teratogen specifically.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a protective feature, and it's carried over in loads of animals and stuff. But they've linked they found the GDF15 hormone to be effective like previously as a anti-obesity mechanism, and the drug metformin actually relies on the mechanism of GDF15 binding specifically to the GDNF-RET receptor in the brain.
So that prevents
control weight loss.
That prevents GFP15 from binding because the receptor's already been bound.
So metformin elevates circulating GDF15, so your natural hormone, which is produced internally by cells, by a variety of cells to a range of stresses. So either I'll come on to that point in a minute, but you take in metformin, you increase circulating GDF15. It increases binding, obviously, to the receptor, and as a result, you experience, I wouldn't say would you call it satiety or
satiety?
Satiety. Yeah, I wouldn't say it induces satiety as such, but it means that you don't want to eat because you feel sick or you're nauseous, you're uncomfortable. You just don't have that need to eat, so you lose weight as a result.
So I understand that you don't want to be eating because in case you take something poisonous or toxic, which then affects the development of your embryo or blastocyst. But then why does it then lead to you throwing up? Is that if you have excess? Is that just it going too far? Because there's kind of like almost a scale between not being full and throwing up.
Yeah, I think nausea generally refers to like feeling and being sick.
Yeah.
And I think if you are feeling sick, you might just throw up anyway. But morning sickness people, like when they experience morning sickness, they genuinely do throw up. I presume it's just because the body's trying to get it out of the system.
Yeah.
Trying to get something out to prevent you from potentially having ingested something bad at that point. Because it's not like your stomach knows what's in it at that point. It's just like kind of taking it in. But I thought it was really interesting that they highlighted that there's not a massive need for food in early pregnancy.
Yeah,
then these levels, I think, peter off during, and obviously cravings come about, and women people start to eat more towards the later end because the calorific need's there.
Yeah. So do we? Is the thought process that we could be, you could develop kind of something to prevent GFP either from being produced or from binding its receptor, and therefore you might be able to take a little pilly which prevents you from having morning sickness?
Yeah, but we've obviously got to be careful because thalidomide was brilliant for curing morning sickness.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I should have checked whether they know whether thalidomide exploited this pathway or not, because obviously we've jumped on the pathway, we've exploited the pathway to manage weight loss in otherwise healthy people. Take metformin, increases circulating GDF15, and you don't want to eat as much, so you will lose weight as a result. The pathway is also replicated in other disease states, apparently in several different cancers, osteosarcoma and breast cancer. Cell lines, they show significantly upregulated GDF15. So these other disease states actually are showing like same effects, and that's why they kind of look so. Those patients might look so emaciated; they don't want to eat as much. It kind of brings about the thought process that they're losing weight, like a potential cancer patient undergoing chemotherapy also has elevated GDF15, and it might be because they're being put off eating because their body's under so much stress, and they deal with that stress.
That was really interesting.
I know metformin as well is being used for like anti-aging properties. I don't think it's not been like fully explored yet, but there are a few like Silicon Valley hipsters using it as like an anti-aging agent. But it hasn't. There's been like a few people researching it, I think, but I don't think it's been confirmed that it actually works for that.
It would figure, because I've read some stuff recently on diet and inflammation, and the key to being young is to avoid inflammation or inflammatory processes. Anything that causes inflammation, drinking alcohol, eating bad foods, eating good foods, too much of it, or something like that. And so if you avoid eating stuff or bringing stuff that is potentially dangerous into the body, if you can avoid the feeling that you want to do that by elevating circulating GDF15, then it would figure that it would reduce inflammation episodes. So
I think they've shown as well just all of the general pathways to do with like metabolism and processing your food. They're all linked into the aging process as well, because I think they've shown that if you minimize your caloric intake, that can slow down your aging a bit. Just because, I don't know, your metabolism's going a bit slower, and so you age slower, I guess. But I think all these pathways are all kind of linked.
Yeah. Very true. Right, anything, do any of you lads have anything more to add?
Nope. And I don't have any more stop codons or anything.
Do you have a stop codon which you can wangle in here?
Yeah, when I find the definition of this receptor, you guys can have a go at guessing it, because I wrote it out.
Okay, while you go for that, here is a Christmas, completely Christmas themed stop codon for us here. So, what do you get if you eat Christmas decorations?
If you eat Christmas decorations.
A red nose? I don't know.
I've seen punchlines worse than some cracker jokes.
Yeah.
But the punchline to this one is tinselitis.
Ah, very good.
Tinselitis. That's
To be fair, that's one of the better ones I've heard this Christmas, I think.
So I can do a step codon for what the receptor is.
Go on.
Family the receptor's in.
Riveting.
So, yeah. Okay, what does the GDNF family of receptors stand for? What's the acronym?
GNDF. Is that what you said? GNDF?
No, I've got it completely wrong. No, I don't have a stop code on. The GDNF family receptor alpha-like proto-oncogene tyrosine protein kinase receptor RET, G-FRAL RET,
Wow.
is what GDF15 binds to. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
That's why it's so difficult for me to spit this out. It's like 8 different words.
Oh, man. Well, I think we'll end with the tinselitis one. We'll wangle that one in at the end and hopefully get some Christmas cheer at the end. So thank you for listening to this festive themed episode of the Biophiles. I think we started off very festive and slowly got less and less festive as we went along. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this.
Just like the festive period.
Whoa, maybe for some. You can reach us on the biophilespodcast@gmail.com, as we have changed our email address from the Biophiles 2022 to the biophilespodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us on Spotify, Amazon, wherever you find your podcasts. You can reach us there. And we hope to be with you in the new year and wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as well. And we'll get back to you hopefully in January 2024 for some more interesting science stories which we'll be discussing together. So from all of us at the Biophiles, thank you very much for listening and goodbye.
Merry Christmas as well.
And Merry Christmas as well.
Merry Christmas, y'all.